At 6, a 28-year-old British lawyer becomes the 5th person to die in a backpackers' town in Southeast Asia. It's thought Simone White and a group of tourists drank contaminated alcohol in Laos. Several others are still in hospital. Also tonight, Donald Trump's controversial pick to be the new Attorney General, Matt Gaetz, has just announced he's pulling out. A report finds that Sir Captain Tom's family personally benefited from the charity they founded in his name. Addressing the nation, President Putin says Russia has hit Ukraine with a new type of missile.
Some lines coming out of the White House on another story, the Russian missile, the experimental missile that Vladimir Putin has described as the one that hit the Ukrainian city of Dnipro earlier today. He calls it an experimental ballistic missile, hypersonic. The White House says that Russia is escalating at every turn in Ukraine. There is some of the damage in Dnipro, and that the White House also said it is aware of Russia's launch of an intermediate range conventional ballistic missile at Ukraine on Thursday and briefed Ukraine and allies in recent days to help them prepare. That came from the press secretary.
Joe Biden approves $300 million in aid for Ukraine as Kyiv fires UK supplied long-range missiles into Russia for the first time. India's billionaire Gautam Adani has been charged in New York over an alleged bribery scheme involving Indian government officials. The US vetoes a UN Security Council resolution on a Gaza ceasefire, drawing criticism from other member nations. And Australia introduces legislation to ban those under 16 years of age from accessing social media. Live to Iceland next to show you a volcano near the capital that is erupting for the 10th time in 3 years. Local authorities say no infrastructure is currently threatened, but the small fishing town of Grindavi is being evacuated. The eruption comes after years of increased seismic activity in the region. Now, before we go, a couple of birthdays to mark for you. The outgoing US president turned 82 years old on Wednesday, an age never before reached by a sitting commander-in-chief. And from the world of politics to the world of anime, it's happy birthday to Goku. Dragon Ball fans on Wednesday celebrated 40 years of the beloved Japanese manga, anime and video game franchise, just months after creator Akira Toriyama's unexpected death. The original Dragon Ball manga was first released in 1984 before being turned into the much-loved anime series a few years later.
Our headlines today. The former Deputy Prime Minister, John Prescott, has died. The Labour veteran was 86 and had been in poor health for some time.
The family of Captain Sir Tom Moore made almost £1.5 million from their connections to his foundation. That's according to a highly critical report by the Charity Commission.
Ukraine is reported to have fired UK's Storm-made Shadow missiles into Russia for the first time. So far, there's been no response from the Kremlin.
Good morning. Thousands of pensioners could be missing out on pension credit and the winter fuel payment it qualifies them for. But with a month to go, 2 in 5 have not even checked if they're eligible.
The water regulator Ofwat has announced 9 companies will now not be using customer money to fund bonuses for bosses. 3 of those firms have been specifically blocked from paying £1.5 million. The regulator has said the rules around executive pay will also be strengthened further once government plans are approved. Pothole compensation claims made to councils in Britain doubled in a year, according to new research from the RSC. More than 20,000 claims were submitted to 18 local authorities with the largest road networks in 2023, compared with more than 8,000 the year before. Australia's Parliament has introduced what it says is the world's first legislation to restrict under-16s from accessing social media. If approved, social media companies would have 1 year to come up with methods to prevent youngsters accessing their platforms, with fines for those who fail to do so.
Let's have a look at today's paper. We begin with the Daily Mirror. Many of the front pages today covering the funeral of the One Direction star Liam Payne, who died last month after falling from a hotel balcony in Argentina. The Mirror headline reads, "Farewell, Liam," alongside photos of his former bandmates and ex-partner, Cheryl.
All for One is the Sun's headline. The paper describes Liam Payne's funeral as the saddest reunion, and again features photos of his One Direction co-stars leaving the private service in Buckinghamshire yesterday.
The Telegraph leads this morning with reports that the military will be hit with £500 million worth of cuts. That's just hours after British-made Storm Shadow missiles were fired into Russia for the first time. Writing for the paper, the ex-Defence Secretary Ben Wallace warns that cuts would send a message to adversaries that the UK's defences are weakening.
And then a look at the Daily Mail, claiming the strikes were personally approved by the Prime Minister, and says it's the first time UK weapons have been used on Russian territory since 1919.
Goodness me. A look inside the papers this morning. I picked out this one. It's in the G2, the supplement with The Guardian this morning. Do you have any phobias?
Not particularly, no. I don't think so.
They're discussing it because there's a Swedish politician, Paulina Brandberg, is afraid of bananas. So if she's going to a conference, her team have to make sure that there's no traces of the fruit anywhere within the vicinity. We will secure the conference that there are no bananas. She has a strong disgust response and has to be hypervigilant, she says, about bananas in the room. But the wider article is about completely irrational phobias. So fear of buttons, balloons, tomatoes. And it's an area of psychology where they don't necessarily know where it comes from. My phobia, and I only realised it was one a couple of years ago that's more widespread, it's called trypophobia, which is like a fear of small clusters, holes or bumps. So you know that bumpy wallpaper?
Yes.
Just makes me shudder. Or seeing the inside of a beehive makes me shudder. Anything like that.
So it's something to do with the surface?
Yeah, like small bumps or holes.
But this sofa is
That's
a little
fine
bit like
because
that.
the bumps aren't
Isn't
visible.
It?
Yeah, that's
Has
all
to
right.
be slightly more bumpy than that.
There will be something in here that makes me uncomfortable. Let's not try and seek it out.
Fear of buttons? I've not heard of that
Yeah, my
one.
sister has a button phobia and she
How does
doesn't
that
know
work?
why. It just makes her feel icky if she sees buttons.
She avoids all the time,
Well, yeah,
surely.
she avoids clothes with buttons on. Yeah.
What about other people's buttons?
Not happy, but has had to learn to live alongside it.
Wow. That's tricky.
Good morning from BBC London. I'm Victoria Hollins. Extra emergency accommodation for people who are sleeping rough has been opened in London as temperatures have fallen below 0 degrees. The Mayor of London and London councils have activated the Pan-London Severe Weather Emergency Protocol to protect the homeless, the first time it's been activated this winter. It'll ensure that councils across London, alongside homelessness charities, open additional emergency facilities during freezing conditions that could pose a threat to life. An investigation has found there are no physical constraints to extending the Northern Line to Clapham Junction. In a boost to the proposal, Wandsworth Council said there are no engineering or geological restrictions that would prevent the London Underground being extended to the busy station after completing initial investigations into the proposal. Residents who've battled for a decade to save a group of community football pitches in Islington say their fight is reaching a critical stage. Islington Council wants to build 200 homes and a medical centre on the site alongside Finsbury Leisure Centre and say they'll relocate the lost pitches in time. But campaigners, including football legend Les Ferdinand, argue the existing space provides a rare green space in an already built-up borough.
I understand that we do need social housing, we do need more housing, but at the same time you bring another 100 families for social housing and how many more kids are you going to have, how many more kids are going to be on the street. So that's the reason I've got involved, because I know what this means to the community and other communities like it.
Facing 20 years in jail in Dubai, the 18-year-old Londoner whose holiday romance is alleged to have fallen foul of the law in the UAE.
Marcus has been extremely distressed since the events. He also had to go to court and they held him there for several hours. He didn't know whether he was going to be released or whether he was going to be jailed at that point. It's chaotic.
Also on the programme. A tube service at Clapham Junction has long been campaigned for. A new report says it is technically possible. Plus, reunited after 35 years, the award-winning artist meeting the teenagers she photographed in the 80s. And
to celebrate Guinness World Records' 70th anniversary, I'll be playing whist, using officially the smallest cards in the world, and meeting the Londoner who created them.
dozens of residents at a block of flats in Islington had to take refuge in a nearby church after a fire in the early hours of this morning. 8 fire engines and around 60 firefighters tackled the blaze on Bakersfield in Islington. Officers also found a number of cannabis plants at the scene, which led to the arrest of a 41-year-old man. Thames Water has been blocked by its regulator Ofwat from using customers' money to pay for bonuses for top bosses. The announcement comes as part of an update into executive pay and financial resilience across the sector. The chief executive, Chris Weston, previously warned that the company only has enough money to survive until next May, but many think it will run out by Christmas. And Labour has reiterated its commitment to reforming leaseholds after months of criticism from campaigners for dawdling. The housing minister promised work was going on to ultimately transition away from the leasehold system in England and Wales. A new bill of reforms is due to be published later next year. In a moment, we are going to get a check on the weather, but first, Trafalgar Square's Christmas tree that's been given to the nation by Norway in gratitude for our help in World War II has been felled and it's on its way, grown in the forests just outside the capital, Oslo. This year's tree was cut down this morning by both the mayors of Oslo and Westminster and will be officially switched on the 5th of December. Now, time for a look at the weather. And the weather's feeling pretty Norwegian, Chris.
Yes, I was going to say, I'll try and spruce up the forecast, Alice. Yeah,